Hi guys and welcome back. So today's video is going to be a bit of a chatty one, probably a bit of a rambly one. So if you want to go get yourself a tea or get your laundry out or get something done while you're listening to this video, then please feel free to do so. Yeah, like I said, it might be a rambly one, but the general topic this is going to be around is education in general, for like children's education. So as you guys probably know, because I talk about it quite a lot, we are considering homeschooling, and this is the year that we need to decide for sure before Samuel starts school, would be the following year. So I'm probably going to talk about this for a bit longer because it's the thing that's in my mind the most at the moment. I'm trying to make a decision on whether or not we're homeschooling. But this video isn't strictly about that as such. It's not about whether we're homeschooling or not. It's just about a podcast I've been listening to and a few thoughts I've been having around education in general. So this is a relevant discussion, whether you've got little kids or big kids, whether you homeschool, whether you send your kids to school. This isn't like one or the other. This is not me trying to push my opinion on anyone, because I don't, at the end of the day, I don't really even have an opinion yet. I'm still trying to form my opinion. So that's why I'm having this chat and thinking about things, because I've not yet really got an opinion as such on the whole topic. So I'm trying to form my opinion, and this video is one of the ways of doing that. So I'm not trying to give answers or even trying to give my opinion. Like I said, I've not decided yet. I'm not sure of what we're doing, and everyone is trying to do the best for their kids, right? Everyone is researching things and trying to do the best for their kids, and so I thought this might be an interesting discussion to have with you guys. Watch the video till the end and then leave a comment if you like and let me know your thoughts, because I'd love to read your thoughts. And also if you have any kind of resources, podcasts that you guys listen to, anything like that you think will be relevant to the discussion, please leave them down below, because I really want to learn more and find out more. And that's where this whole thing stems from, is me listening to podcasts and stuff. A little bit of background, if you have never watched this video before, you don't know who I am. I live in the UK, specifically in Scotland, so a lot of these things that I'm talking about will be relevant specifically to the UK and the Scottish school system. So just a bit of background there. So we are a Christian family, and as such we have got issues with the education system in the UK. We have issues, and as a lot of Christian families do, around the curriculum and the things that are being put into the curriculum and that are mandatory for the kids, and for things that you can't opt out of. I'm not going to go too much into that side of things because that gets kind of controversial, but just as a Christian family we were thinking about the education system for a while, because we see a lot of the way that the curriculum is going and it's not in line with a lot of our beliefs. And so that makes things tricky if you send your child to school, because it's very difficult to impossible to opt out of things that are placed into the curriculum. So that's a bit vague, I know, but if you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go too much into that. But I know that a lot of other families are actually starting to consider things about the education system that might not be great because of the pandemic. So obviously during the pandemic a lot of kids were homeschooling, their schoolwork was being sent home and they were doing lessons over Zoom and such. And a lot of the parents, I've been seeing discussions everywhere about how the parents are finding out that the work has been allocated to their kids isn't ability appropriate, isn't age appropriate. Their kids are getting things that are way too difficult. Their kids are getting things that are not good for them as little individual people. And so people have started to have issues with the education system, I've seen, out with the kind of Christian community as well. I think the thought of homeschooling and the negativity, not the negativity, but the negative feelings towards certain parts of the school system are becoming much more prevalent now because of the pandemic, and because people we're seeing firsthand what their kids are being taught, and realising that it's not necessarily great for their kids and for their individual circumstances. And I'm not saying that school is awful. I went to school, and particularly primary school, for the most part I enjoyed it. This is one of the reasons we're actually considering putting our kids into school, because primary school for me was a very positive experience, and I think they're improving in many ways, the schools. And so I'm not one of those people that's going to be like, school is awful, no kid should go to school. I do think a lot of it's individual, and schools can be good for many people, so I'm not saying anything about that. But now I wanted to move on to the podcast I was listening to yesterday. I've got some notes here, by the way, just to make sure I don't forget stuff. But I was listening to the podcast, the 1,000 Hours Outside podcast, where she had the guest teacher Tom on, I'll link it down below, you can go check it out guys if you want to listen to it. It's very interesting, and I've listened to a lot of different podcasts, but this is what I was listening to yesterday, and they were talking about how I think this is in America, but they're talking about how curriculums are not based on research, and that all the research shows that kids should be engaging in play-based activities. So not sitting at a desk writing learning activities, but play-based activities, which are, I'm sure you know what play-based is, but things that are playing, which might not necessarily be the same as sitting down and writing things from the board kind of idea. And they brought up the fact that kids, in general, kids might not learn to read until between the ages of 7 and 11. So that's quite a big gap, you know. 7-year-olds and 11-year-olds are quite far apart, but apparently that's the time that kids learn to read. It's quite a big gap of time in which kids generally learn to read, but we know that the school system pushes them to read much younger than that. And they actually compared reading to learning to walk. So they compared learning to read to learning to walk in this podcast, which I thought was fascinating, because of course we don't get our kids to walk, they just walk, don't they? We're excited when they walk, but we don't like teach them necessarily how to walk. They just kind of crawl around, pull themselves up, and then one day they start walking, and it's not something that we've pushed on them. And they mentioned that in this podcast that if walking was done within a school environment, then we would become convinced that the only way you could learn to walk was within school, the same as a lot of people believe the only way you can learn to read is within a specific school type situation, which I thought was fascinating, because you assume, don't you, that reading you kind of has to be taught, like you have to teach your child to read. And they were kind of arguing in this podcast that when your child's ready to read, they'll just learn to read, and very little input is needed on your side. And I think this is absolutely fascinating, this whole idea. And I've seen two main kind of groups have emerged in my mind anyway of how people view education. So to me, there is the homeschoolers, in the very literal sense of they do school at home. They'll have sit-down lessons, they'll get their curriculum books out, and they will very much take the school situation and just take it home, which means they can kind of adapt the curriculum, but the essentials idea of school is still it's still at home, you know. So they've just taken the idea of school and taken it home. So there's the homeschooling community like that, versus a much more play-based, relaxed, free approach, which would come under, like, unschooling people would come under that. Many different homeschoolers would home educators would come under that category. So there's like homeschool community versus like a play-based, free idea of learning, which they're kind of two extremes. And yeah, I've been researching both extremes because I think they're both very interesting. These are the two extremes within homeschooling, obviously not within a school setting. But these are the two homeschooling kind of options in a way, it seems like. These are the two ways that people go. They go very, very free and relaxed, kind of let your child do what they want a lot of the time, or let's sit down and do school properly. And I do agree with what they were saying in the podcast, that it can be, I think, well, they weren't saying this in the podcast, but a lot of it can be to do with the fear of the unknown, right? If you're not seeing what your child is learning physically on paper, you're questioning, are they actually learning anything? Because we always want to see results. This is why we test kids constantly, right, at school, because we want to see what they're learning, and we don't just trust that they're learning something. So it's the fear of the unknown, and it's the fear of relinquishing control, you know, the whole control. Because the thing that I struggle with is that if I didn't do school at home, then I would struggle with the thought that, oh, they're not learning enough, they're not doing enough. I wouldn't want to give up the control of knowing what they're learning, you know, if I was going to do a much more relaxed approach. So those are the kind of categories that I see within the homeschooling community. And also, this isn't just relevant to homeschooling, because we as parents are educators, so when our kids are home, we're also educating them, aren't we? So yeah, I've learned though I do need to get better at facilitating Samuel's play, because I do agree, and a lot of people agree, especially in the younger years, in toddler years and older, is play is definitely the way to learn for young kids. I think everyone pretty much unanimously agrees with that. That's why they don't go to school until the age of 5. because play-based learning is the way to go. Everyone agrees up until that age at least. And I know that there's certain things that are definitely agreed with. For example, outdoor time is very important. I think everyone agrees that outdoor time for kids is super important. That's not contested, I don't think, in any way, because the research clearly shows that the massive benefits for that. And during my potty training journey, I did learn the hard way that a lot of the time I do agree that kids will learn things when they are ready, and you can't make them learn something, which sounds obvious, but this is what I learned when I was doing potty training with Samuel. So we started fairly young with Samuel because I read the book, Oh Crap, Potty Training. I read that book and thought, yep, we can do this, we can potty train him fast. So we started quite young with Samuel. He didn't learn for over a year after that, and then when he was actually, now looking back, when he got to the point where he was ready, he potty trained pretty fast. Like the introduction of nursery also helped him. Going to nursery helped, but he learned within a short period of time pretty much how to potty train, and before that was just a lot of hassle and probably a lot of unnecessary stress. Like I didn't need to do that for him so early, but I thought if I do everything right, then he will learn. But it doesn't work like that with kids. I've realised that just because you do everything right doesn't mean that they are ready to learn something, and so you have to kind of wait till they're ready to learn something. So that is something that I did learn during my potty training journey with Samuel. That you can do all the preparation you want, you can read all the books, do all the research, which I do, and you can just do everything you can, but if that child isn't ready, then there's no point doing all of that, basically. And a little while ago I came across the idea of unschooling, which puts everyone off from the word that is used. Unschooling is a word that puts a lot of people off, and it put me off initially. I thought unschooling just sounds ridiculous. It came across to me as just letting your child do what they want, and to me that's not the right way to go about things at all. In general, you can't just let your child do what they want. So I came across that, and that was my perception and understanding of unschooling. And then I came across the YouTube channel Real Family Journey. They don't post a lot anymore, but I'll link it down below, guys, if you want to check it out. If you've done any research on unschooling at all, you'll probably have come across them. But they're a family that came across as a very moderate approach to unschooling. A really kind of much more in between kind of approach, which I'm always a fan of things in betweeny, because I'm never one or the other usually. And so she did it in a way that I found fascinating, was that she set up kind of more like invitation to plays, but invitation to learns, I guess. And she would set these up on her table, and I'm assuming she didn't really have the option to go on screens and stuff like that, but they could do the work, or they could do the activities that are set out in the way that they like, or they could choose not to do it. Yeah, that's kind of what I saw, and more often than not they did want to do it because it was very fascinating and interesting, the things that were set up for them and the invitations to learn that they had. So I found that absolutely fascinating. I thought that might be the way to go, because again, the thing that did put me off as well was, although I was scared to not do the homeschooling as school at home, so I'm kind of scared not to do set curriculums, but then I'm also like, it's going to be me homeschooling, home educating my kid. It's going to be me doing it. So if I don't do the curriculums and stuff, I feel very, very stressed that they're not learning properly. But also, if it's just me doing it the whole time, then I don't think I would be able to stick to having a whole morning or a whole afternoon or a whole day of learning with kids in that way. I just don't think I can do it. I don't think I've got the patience to do it. And so I thought, you know what, if we have it in this way and it's self-directed learning, then I don't have to put as much of an effort all the time into it. And that sounds bad, like I don't want to put effort into it, but I don't want to be sitting down making my child do page after page of a workbook. That's what I don't want to do, because I know he's not going to be into that. Like, who's really into sitting down doing page after page of workbooks? Not a lot of people, especially not a lot of little boys. My little boys, I can already see it, they're not going to want to be doing that even at the age of 5. And so I thought maybe this is the way to go. Maybe a much more relaxed but still learning focused and directed way to do it is the way to go. So that's a thought that I've been having, was to kind of go more to that route. And on top of that, is there even a best way to do something? Like, I've been researching so much trying to find out the best thing to do, and does that even exist? Do we even know if the best thing to do for our kids exists, or is there only the best thing to do for your child, for your family at that time, so that they can learn the best? Like, am I searching for this elusive answer when an answer doesn't even exist? I feel like kind of I am. In many ways, I think it comes down to the ultimate goal of education. What is the goal that we want to achieve with education? Because that really is what will drive the steps that we do to get there. So, is the goal for education to go to university, to get a job? Are those the goals of school? Because that was my perception until pretty recently. Is the goal of school is to get a job or to get to uni, specifically to get to university. That was the kind of goal that, as I've been kind of taught it, as I've been viewed it, viewed it, the way I've been taught through school and such. The goal is university. The goal is not the learning, but the goal is the getting of the A grades. That's the goal, not the goal. The goal is not the learning for us to learn or to get more knowledge or to build upon your learning. It's not any of those things. The goal is university. That's what I was taught, which I obviously now don't agree with. Because although university can be important for some careers, although it can be important for some jobs to have a certain level of exams and such, the goal is not to get a job or to go to university. That's just not the goal of education, is it? Like, those are things that are important and that you need to be prepared for. But yeah, is school even preparing us for the world of work? Is the world of work, are we even being prepared for the world of work with school? Like, what is it that people need in the workplace? And so this is one thing they brought up actually in the podcast. I wrote it down because it was interesting. So this teacher Tom proposed that the people are most successful, not in terms of money necessarily, but the people that are most successful in terms of getting the job, got a job they enjoy, that they find fulfilling. The traits that they show are being self-motivated, someone you want to hang out with, and someone who works well with others. Now, do we think that school, as it stands now, do I think that helps us to achieve those three things of being self-motivated, someone you want to hang out with, and working well with others? Now, I'm not saying I'm not saying that is the three things, but to me that very much makes sense as being three things that are very, very important, at least for a child as they grow into an adult, whatever they do, but also in the world of work. Those three things are very important. And do I ultimately think that school is going to give them those things, or that school is just drumming into them facts that they forget after the exam is gone? Because that was my perception of school when I was in school and university. This is specifically high school and university. My perception was you learn all the facts, you get the grades, and then you move on to get the next grade. And that was my kind of perception. I wasn't thinking about how could I be more self-motivated, or am I working well with others. In fact, I think the schools are not great at helping you work well with others, as from my experience. I know it's not immediate experience, but from my experience, it wasn't great. So I'm thinking, how can we do better? How can we have this differently for my children? How can I have this different for my children? Yeah. So yeah, I do think it comes down to the goal of education. I think that if the goal of education is university and school, university and work, then private education is definitely the way to go if you can afford it, because the private people that go to private schools will ultimately go into a lot of the top universities, because that's just the way it works, because they're very good at getting good results from their students. But I've watched some documentaries on private schools as well, and I've seen a lot of what they do as well is not specifically school as such. It's a lot of extracurricular activities, which they seem as very important, which I thought was very interesting, that the extracurricular activities are seen as very, very important. So yeah, I don't even know if I would use a private school even if we could afford it. I probably wouldn't, because of the goal of education. Is the goal of education top uni and a really, really high-flying job, or do we want to make well-rounded people that can work well with others, that are self-motivated or whatever they choose to do, that get themselves a fulfilling career, but not necessarily a career that makes them tons of money, but a career that's going to fulfill them, and a life that's going to fulfill them ultimately, right? So I don't know the answer. Schools here are I mean, there's different types of schools. Not all schools are the same, right? There's Montessori schools, there's other types of schools, but if you can't, only if you can afford it. If you can't afford to pay for private education, then your school choices are pretty much a state school. That's pretty much the choices here. And so my decision is whether or not to send them to the state school. I might, because there are certain good things, especially in primary school. I think there's a lot of good things about the school system, but there's also things that are good about the school system. I could just do that. I could just do them at home. I can do a lot of that at home. I mean, I'm not going to go into the whole argument of what everyone always says about having your kids being socialised. I'm not really going to go into that, except to say that we would be doing a lot of clubs. If we did homeschool our kids, we would be doing a lot of out and about learning, not at home learning as such. So we would be educating our kids through lots of clubs, so they get a lot of time with people like around their age. We're doing a lot of things like library trips. We're doing a lot of life learning, teaching them about, I don't know, finances and money, and getting to physically do real world stuff that sets them up well for the future, you know? So I think that stuff is very important. And one of the things that I wish they taught you at school was about finances, right? In high school there should be a class where they talk about investing, they talk about pensions, they talk about how all the stuff, the real world important stuff works, and what's the good options out there, because I don't think I was well into my 20s before I learned about half of the important stuff to do with financials, you know? And by that time it's getting kind of late, because, you know, they're getting kind of late to invest in certain things and all that. So those things are not taught at school. They should be taught at school. They're very, very important in my opinion. And yeah, so we're not close to making our decision yet. As you can see, I do think that primary schools can be great, and it's mostly high school that I have the problem with. But could we work around those problems? Could we just educate our kids at home as we like, and then at school they'll learn different things? I don't know. As you can tell, we haven't decided yet, and I'm still rambling on. I'm sure no one is listening, because I'm getting very boring now, I think, and I'm repeating myself. But I wanted to talk about that. I'll link the podcast down below, guys, if you're interested in listening to it. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know any additional podcasts or articles that you've read that are interesting, because I would love to research more about all these topics. And yeah, let me know your decision just to school, if you've made a decision yet, or if your kids are still young. This might still be a new thing for you. But that's all the thoughts, a lot of the thoughts that are revolving around in my brain all the time. Another thing I wanted to say before I go, am I just overthinking this? I am a big overthinker. Like, I want to research, like, before I buy anything, before I buy Samuel a toy, I have to read about 10 reviews on Amazon and then go read independent reviews, you know? Like, I'm just such an over-researcher and overthinker, and I think that can be a bad thing. Like, if I send him to school, will he be fine? If I homeschool him, will he be fine? Does it matter to the extent that I'm saying that it matters? To me, it matters a huge amount, but does it actually matter that much? I don't know. Does it matter to the extent I think, or could I choose either option, and either option will work out fine? Because that's an option, isn't it? Like, there might not necessarily be a best decision for our family. Maybe either one could be fine, and I can pick either one without feeling stressed. You know, just pick the closest to what the best thing is that I think, but either way would be okay, and they'll come out a well-rounded person at the end, you know? That's another thought. Okay guys, I'm gonna leave it there. Leave me a comment below, let me know what you think. I'll see you soon in my next one. Bye guys.